I was in an old church in Cambridge, discussing arrangements for my wedding. The historic First Parish building in Cambridge exuded a nostalgic atmosphere that enveloped my heart in warmth. The soft light filtered through the stained glass windows, gently illuminating the wooden pews that held over a century of history. In late May, a refreshing breeze lifted the petals of the blooming azalea in the church garden. This season in New England is perfect for weddings. The majestic sound of the organ echoed through the church, filling my heart with solemnity. "Are you sure about this venue?" the church coordinator anxiously asked me. Our budget of $25,000 was less than half the average cost of a wedding in this area. But Nathan and I had decided that paying off his student loans would take priority over an extravagant wedding. "Yes, this is the perfect venue for us," I replied with a smile. The reception at the adjacent Harvest restaurant would provide ample space for about 50 close friends and colleagues. Inside the historic church building, the elegant chandelier lighting cast soft shadows across the white tablecloths. Nathan and I were just starting our careers as researchers. I was working in a biology lab at Harvard, while he was developing new treatments at the M. Our combined annual income was $75,000. While it was not a small amount, we couldn't afford an extravagant wedding considering our student loan payments. But this was our choice, to live honestly with the person I love. That's what I thought would make us happy. That night, I came home to what seemed like a scene from another world. The living room was lined with wedding catalogs from luxury brands, and my sister Vanessa was sitting there with her fiancé. Her fiancé, James, was an executive at a major pharmaceutical company with an annual income of over $400,000. "Look, this is our wedding venue." Vanessa excitedly spread out a brochure for a luxury resort hotel. The budget was $150,000, which her fiancé's family would completely cover. They were expecting over 200 guests, a champagne tower, caviar, a full dinner from a top chef. Everything was extravagant. My mother's eyes sparkled as she listened to my sister's wedding plans. Our parents had invested most of their $500,000 retirement fund into my sister's future. However, when the subject of my wedding was brought up, their expressions changed completely. "You're having your wedding in a church so cheap?" I could never show my face to my friends. Vanessa looked at me with contempt, the same sense of superiority she had held since childhood. "I will attend Vanessa's wedding, but not yours." My mother's words pierced my heart like needles of ice. My father simply nodded silently. His affection had always been directed towards my sister. Since childhood, Vanessa had been special, beautiful, sociable, living the life our parents had hoped for. Meanwhile, I had chosen the path of a modest researcher. On my way home, fighting back tears, I called Nathan. His warm voice echoed through the receiver. "It's okay, Olivia. We have our happiness. Even without your family's understanding, we have 50 dear friends who will celebrate with us." Those words gave me strength. It was true. It may not be flashy, but this wedding would be true to who we are. Although modest, it would be full of heart. The spring breeze gently swept the Harvard University campus, visible from the train window, with its fresh greenery. Nathan and I would walk our path, believing that love and honesty would bring true happiness. On the morning of our wedding day, it was a magnificent May day, as if heaven itself had blessed us. The morning sun touched the spire of First Parish in Cambridge, warming the red brick walls that had witnessed over a century of history. In the church garden, the azalea in full bloom swayed in the spring breeze, their petals falling like the confetti of nature's blessing. From early morning, my best friend Sarah and my colleagues from the lab had gathered, carefully placing flowers one by one on white tablecloths. Pink bridal veils and seasonal flowers created a simple yet heartfelt altar. The modest decorations harmonized perfectly with the solemn atmosphere of this historic church. Sarah smiled kindly at me. She had stayed up late the night before, helping with the preparations. Although my wedding dress was not from a luxury brand, my grandmother's antique lace veil added a special sparkle to the simple dress. "Your mother and Vanessa?" Sarah asked hesitantly as she helped me get dressed. "They will not come," I answered with a smile, trying to keep the pain from showing in my expression. My parents' and sister's seats would be empty, but that was inevitable. When the solemn tones of the organ began to echo through the church, I took a deep breath, standing at the entrance of the hall. About 50 guests were watching with warm smiles, colleagues from the lab, friends from college, and Nathan's family. It wasn't a big crowd, but the smile on each person's face filled the room with love. And there Nathan was, waiting at the altar, tears of joy shining in his eyes. "My beloved Olivia," Nathan's voice echoed through the quiet church. "Meeting you is the greatest miracle of my life. We may not be rich, but we live honestly, supporting each other, encouraging each other, always being thankful." Each of his words went straight to my heart. The light coming through the stained glass windows gently enveloped us, like a blessing from heaven. During the ceremony, I noticed the empty seats of my family, but strangely, I didn't feel sadness. Instead, gratitude filled my heart for those who were there, surrounding us with their warm smiles. After the ceremony, the reception began at the adjacent Harvest restaurant in the historic brick building. The soft light from the chandelier illuminated the space, and the aroma of New England clam chowder floated in the air, accompanied by the lively conversation of the guests. Then, an unexpected visitor arrived. "Can I have a moment?" The speaker was Thomas Walker, a prominent figure in the pharmaceutical industry who had shown interest in my research. "Dr. Miller, it was a beautiful ceremony." Thomas approached us with a smile and offered his congratulations. This kind of sincere ceremony truly represents genuine happiness. Although it is not extravagant, it is a wedding full of love and sincerity. I was deeply moved by his words. They brought tears to my eyes. Thomas's expression clouded slightly. "By the way, where are your father, your mother, and your sister? Are they sick?" That question created silent waves. No one knew my family had intentionally refrained from attending, but with this question, everything would come to light. The reception continued slowly. The delicate taste of the grilled Atlantic salmon, the accompaniments of seasonal vegetables, and the Boston cream cake for dessert. Although they were not luxurious, each dish contained the sincere care of the chef. The speeches of the guests were full of warmth. The professor from the laboratory spoke of our dedicated research approach. Friends from university talked about how Nathan and I met and grew together. Nathan's parents expressed their joy in welcoming me as a new member of their family. In that warm atmosphere, I realized that a new and true happiness cannot be measured by material things or money. The ties with people are what truly celebrate us. Outside the window, the setting sun over Harvard Square cast a soft light, as if it was resisting the end of the day. A soft bell rang in the reception hall of the Harvest restaurant, announcing the dessert service. At that moment, Thomas Walker's expression froze. He stared at the screen of his smartphone and then looked at me attentively. His gaze contained indescribably complex emotions. "Dr. Miller," his voice maintained its usual dignity but with a touch of sadness. "I need to ask you about this." Paula's smartphone post showed my sister Vanessa's Instagram account, posted just 30 minutes ago. There was a shocking message next to photos of her surrounded by luxury brand handbags and dresses. "I'm too embarrassed to attend my sister's cheap wedding. I wouldn't want my friends to see such a modest wedding. Real celebrities understand, right?" The post had likes from our parents. Even a comment from my mother. "This is the real celebration. It will be the wedding of our beloved Vanessa." The atmosphere in the place froze. I instantly took a deep breath and slowly closed my eyes. When I opened them, there were no tears. My voice sounded surprisingly calm. My family refused to attend my wedding, saying it was embarrassing. The sound of 50 guests holding their breath was audible. Everyone had believed the pretense of a sudden family illness. Thomas stood up silently. His expression showed a severity I had never seen before. "Excuse me, but I must attend to a matter. Urgent." He pulled out his smartphone and quickly began making calls. "Mr. President, I deeply apologize, but a serious problem has arisen. Urgent measures are needed regarding our dealings with the Richardson family." With those words, events began to unfold rapidly. In a corner of the venue, a video conference had begun with several executives. The faces on the screen showed serious expressions. "We should immediately review the $50 million deal with the luxury real estate development. Due to ethical concerns, we should reevaluate all business relationships." The voices of the executives, silent but firm, moved the situation forward. Thomas himself was composing a mass email to contacts in the industry. Clear words lined the text. "Due to the discovery of serious ethical problems, we are immediately reviewing all business relationships with the Richardson family." Actions that ignore basic human values are incompatible with our corporate philosophy. By then, queries from multiple business partners had started flooding James's company smartphone. Notifications continued to ring like warning bells. "What have you done?" James' furious call to my sister. His voice was so loud it could be heard outside the restaurant. "The company's reputation is ruined. All contracts will be void immediately." After the call, between sobs, my sister turned to my mother. "Mom, this is terrible." James is furious. "The company is in trouble." Panic spread like an avalanche. My father received an urgent call from a friend, warning him. Things have gotten serious. The whole family panicked and started running to the wedding venue. Meanwhile, I calmly sipped my champagne. The sweetness of the Boston cream pie felt oddly pleasant. Next to me, Nathan gently squeezed my hand. The atmosphere in the venue had changed, like the calm before the storm. The guests watched in silence, but with tangible tension, anticipating what would happen next. Thomas stood before us again and bowed deeply. "I sincerely apologize for causing such a disturbance on your special day." I gently shook my head. "No, thank you for revealing the truth." At that moment, the door to the restaurant swung open with a loud noise. There stood my family. With hurried footsteps, the expressions of my parents and sister were completely distraught, having lost all of their usual dignity and arrogance. My mother's makeup was smeared, her appearance disheveled in a way she would normally never allow. Vanessa, though wearing a luxury brand dress, was pale and shaky. My father tried to speak, but kept losing his words, just standing there. "Olivia, please." My mother's cry echoed through the place. Her voice held none of its usual haughtiness. Instead, it dripped with pure fear and desperation. "James's company is in trouble. Do something." My sister screamed, almost collapsing. "Big sister, help me. The engagement might be canceled. Please, do something." The air in the place instantly froze. The 50 guests held their breath at this unexpected development. The light from the chandelier illuminated the dramatic scene like stage lighting. I slowly brought my champagne glass to my lips. Although we had not prepared crystal champagne, this modest vineyard's glow contained our pride and dignity. After taking a sip, I spoke softly. "Could you please sit down? It is rude to cause a scene in front of everyone." At those words, my mother seemed to come to her senses. Suddenly, she realized that there were 50 guests present. "Oh yes, of course." My mother sat down nervously, and my father and sister followed her. At my side, Nathan gently squeezed my hand. His warmth gave me strength. My sister began to speak between sobs. "All the $50 million agreements of James' company could be canceled. If that happens, the engagement, my life. This is the result of you making fun of my wedding as cheap and posting it on social media." I interrupted her. Thomas Walker stood up, cutting my sister off. His expression showed severity, but also dignity. "Richardson family." His voice resonated calmly, but firmly throughout the place. "This is no longer just a family matter. It is a serious ethical problem that goes to the core of our business." The faces of my parents and sister turned even paler. Discrimination based on social status and economic power. Abandonment of family love. And the public display of these actions on social networks. Thomas silently scrolled through my sister's post on his smartphone. "Cheap wedding. I can't show it to my friends." And parents like this post. It is already causing huge waves throughout the industry. My father's shoulders slumped. "We are currently receiving numerous inquiries from business partners asking if we should review our dealings with the Richardson family." But as my sister desperately tried to make excuses, I silently raised my hand. "Vanessa, shut up." At those words, my sister fell. I had never spoken to her in such a loud tone before. "This is the fruit of the seeds you sowed. Nothing more, nothing less." I picked up my dessert fork and silently cut into the Boston cream pie. I continued. "You couldn't celebrate my wedding as a family. Instead, you mocked and scorned it. How can anyone trust you as a business partner? A bore." Silence hovered over the place. In that silence, I slowly brought the dessert to my mouth. The soft sweetness of the custard melted on my tongue. But, big sister, we are family." "No." At my sister's anguished cry, I bowed my head gently. "Family? How interesting. Just a few hours ago, my wedding was too embarrassing to attend, no?" "Oh yeah, your words about how real celebrities understand were pretty impressive too." I bet you didn't expect that definition of celebrity to be overturned so quickly. At those words, my sister completely broke down. She collapsed, dragging her luxury brand dress across the floor. There might be a solution, Thomas spoke again. All eyes in the venue were focused on him. Solving ethical issues requires a proper and sincere response, and that response can't just be a formal apology. He placed his smartphone on the table and continued. First, a full retraction and apology for the social media posts. Then, a detailed explanation of the circumstances and a written statement of reflection. Ethics training would also be necessary. And the deals? My father asked in a weak voice. No, that's just the bare minimum response. Rebuilding trust will take much more time and effort. At these words, the color faded from the faces of my entire family. That's when Nathan stood up silently. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, and Vanessa, he said. His voice maintained its usual sweetness but carried an inner strength. Worth is not necessarily measured by money or luxury. It exists in human sincerity, thoughtfulness, and love. Nathan placed his hand gently on my shoulder. This cheap wedding has the sincere blessings of 50 precious people, and those blessings are priceless. The assembled guests fell into silence. At that moment, big tears fell from the eyes of my parents and my sister. They were tears of regret, genuine as I had never seen before. Spring in Cambridge embraced the city with the same gentleness as 5 years ago. In front of First Parish in Cambridge, the azaleas were once again in full bloom, swaying in the wind. Beneath those petals, a little girl was running with a smile. Emma, be careful when you run, I shouted with a smile. My 3-year-old daughter was dancing among the petals of the flowers like a spring bloom. Her eyes had the sweetness of Nathan's. In these 5 years, our lives had changed drastically. Nathan's research on new treatments bore fruit, bringing offers of collaboration from several pharmaceutical companies. I got a position as an associate professor at Harvard University. And above all, the birth of our little girl, Emma, brought new joy and meaning to our lives. Meanwhile, Vanessa paid a high price due to the impact of the social media post from that day. Her engagement to James was called off, and her dream of a lavish wedding at a luxury resort hotel was wiped out. Most of our parents' retirement fund, which they had invested in, also dwindled due to stock market crashes. Vanessa stayed secluded in our parents' house for a while. Then, one day, she suddenly decided to move to a small town. There, she started working in a small flower shop. She sold all her luxury brand handbags and dresses, starting a modest life. You know, one client told me the flowers I arrange warm their heart, she wrote in her letter. Maybe the daily interaction with small flowers, honest beauty instead of expensive vases full of luxurious flowers, gradually changed her. Our parents changed too, significantly. With their reduced retirement fund, they had to give up their planned retirement dream. But surprisingly, this brought them positive changes. Instead of a luxurious retirement, spending time with family is more important, my mother whispered as she held Emma. My father nodded silently as he gently stroked his granddaughter's head. Now, gathering in front of this church for a monthly family lunch has become our tradition. Of course, not everything was solved overnight. Rebuilding trust took considerable time. But through this process, we gradually learned what true family ties mean. The other day, when Vanessa visited my lab after a long time, she looked at the fresh greenery of Harvard Square through the window and started talking softly. That wedding day, it taught me something important. True value is not about money or appearances. It is found in human connections and genuine caring. Her eyes no longer had their former superficiality. Instead, they reflected genuine warmth. Thomas Walker maintained his strict approach as promised. However, by observing my family's sincere remorse and efforts, he gradually paved the way to rebuild trust. People make mistakes. It's what they learn from those mistakes and how they grow, he reportedly said at a recent business meeting. Now, we are building a new form of family. It may not be perfect, but I believe true affection grows within that imperfection. Emma still plays under the petals of the azaleas. The spring sunlight gently illuminates her smile. Come on, it's almost lunchtime. Everyone is looking forward to sharing meals with family. Such simple happiness. Maybe that day, 5 years ago, taught us its importance in an unexpected way. At the Harvard restaurant, the white tablecloths are laid out as always, with the chandelier light gently swaying. The food is not extravagant, but the joy of sharing this time seems more valuable than any fancy cuisine. Emma, Grandma and Grandpa are here. Watching my daughter happily run toward them, I smiled silently in my heart. Life sometimes takes unexpected turns, but each turn takes us to the right place. A spring breeze gently swept through Harvard Square.